With a mix of fear and defiance, the stewardess whispered, "I spit in your coffee," her words hanging heavy in the air. In the split second that his coffee turned bitter with betrayal, Captain Daniel Mercer knew everything had changed. One shocking act of sabotage shattered his morning calm, and, with it, decades of trust in the system. The day the first light of dawn stretched its shadows over the tarmac at Atlanta International Airport. Daniel's finely tuned instincts screamed that something was wrong. This wasn't a mere lapse in service. It was a calculated assault on his dignity, an act that revealed the underbelly of bias lurking within the airline industry. With resolve forged over years of dedication, he chose not to ignore the sting of betrayal, but to confront it head-on. Daniel's day took an unforeseen turn the moment he lifted the freshly refilled coffee cup to his lips. In that instant, as the familiar warmth gave way to a sharp, acrid flavor that sent shockwaves through his senses, he felt an unsettling dread. It wasn't merely a bad brew. It was a deliberate act of sabotage. His mind raced, recalling every subtle warning sign from the morning, every small detail that hinted something was off. The realization that someone had purposefully tampered with his drink ignited a fire deep within him. He needed to find out who was behind this. His heart pounded like a drum as he silently questioned every interaction he'd had that day. His mind replayed the fleeting exchange with Sophia Reynolds, the nervous glances exchanged among the crew, and the unexplained presence of Jack Whitaker, a flight attendant with whom he'd had little prior interaction. Every memory, every half-forgotten comment, converged into a single painful clarity. Someone within his trusted circle had undermined his safety and dignity. "Who would do this?" he murmured under his breath, his voice low and resolute, determined not to let fear paralyze him. Daniel initiated a quiet investigation. His seasoned instincts led him to search for concrete evidence amid the chaos of his thoughts. "I need to know what happened," he insisted, his tone firm yet measured, as he shared his suspicions with First Officer Ryan Carter. Ryan, ever the steady presence by his side, responded with a blend of concern and loyalty. "Captain, we need to be cautious. Let's document everything and follow protocol," he advised, his voice quivering slightly under the weight of the moment, as the cockpit door closed behind them. Tension hung in the air. Daniel recalled a time when his confidence had been unshakable, when every flight reaffirmed his abilities. But today, that unyielding spirit was being tested. "This is not just about one tainted cup," he confided to Ryan, his voice a mix of anger and sorrow. "It's about every moment I've ever been made to feel less than the professional I am. It's about standing up for every pilot who's ever been undermined." Meanwhile, in the cabin, whispers of discontent and confusion spread. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances, and an undercurrent of tension rippled through the ranks. When security personnel were summoned, the atmosphere shifted from simmering anger to controlled urgency. The accused, Emma Caldwell, a longtime flight attendant known for her polished appearance and measured tone, suddenly found herself at the center of a controversy that threatened to upend her career. Emma stood motionless, the weight of suspicion pressing down on her. Her normally composed demeanor wavered as she met Daniel's gaze, one filled with betrayal and quiet fury. "Captain, you can't possibly believe I had anything to do with this," she said, her voice steady but tinged with fear. Daniel studied her carefully. He had worked with Emma for years. They weren't close, but they had always maintained professional respect. And yet there had been moments, small, nearly imperceptible, where he had sensed a quiet resistance from her, an underlying tension that he had chosen to ignore. Until now, First Officer Ryan stepped forward, breaking the charged silence. "We need to test what's in that cup," he said, his eyes flicking between Daniel and Emma. "If there's evidence of tampering, we'll have our answer." The coffee cup, now a symbol of something far greater than a bad brew, sat untouched on the counter in the cockpit. Daniel took a slow breath, his mind racing through the possibilities. If someone had sabotaged his drink, what else were they capable of? Could this have been a warning? A test of his reaction? Or was it something more sinister? Security personnel took possession of the cup, moving swiftly to run tests. Meanwhile, Daniel turned to the rest of the crew, scanning their faces for any flicker of guilt. Some averted their eyes. Others looked at him with quiet sympathy. But no one spoke. "Emma, now seated away from the others, looked pale but defiant. "Captain," she said finally, "you think this is about you?" Her words, though whispered, cut through the air like a blade. Daniel narrowed his eyes. "What are you implying?" Emma exhaled slowly. "There are things happening in this airline that you don't see, things you're not supposed to see. And when people ask too many questions, strange things start happening to them." A chill ran through Daniel. He had spent decades navigating the skies, trusting in the system that had shaped him. Had he been blind to something far more insidious lurking beneath the surface? Ryan glanced at Daniel, sensing his captain's unease. "Are you saying this isn't personal?" he asked Emma. She let out a hollow laugh. "It's always personal, but not in the way you think." The security officer returned, holding a sealed report. "Preliminary results show traces of an unidentified substance in the coffee," he announced. That a murmur of shock rippled through the room. Daniel felt a slow burn of anger rise within him. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't an overreaction. This was real. Emma's expression darkened. "I didn't do this," she said firmly. Daniel locked eyes with her. "Then who did?" She hesitated, then said, "You're asking the wrong question, Captain. The question isn't who, it's why." At that moment, Daniel knew. This was just the beginning. Isolated in a space that once felt like a shared camaraderie, Emma Caldwell stood near the cockpit door, her posture tense as she attempted to explain herself. Her voice carried a mix of panic and defensiveness. "I was just updating the count," she stammered, avoiding eye contact with Captain Daniel Mercer. But Daniel's steady gaze and unwavering tone cut through her feeble denials. "Your explanation doesn't account for the taste of my coffee," he said, his voice firm, "nor does it justify the breach of trust." Each word was laden with both disappointment and an unyielding demand for accountability. This confrontation, brief yet explosive, marked the first of several emotional crescendos that would define the day that the flight resumed its journey across the skies toward New York's JFK International Airport. Every minute was punctuated by Daniel's relentless internal dialogue. He analyzed his past experiences, recalling the harsh realities of prejudice that had seeped into even the most professional of environments. Memories churned within him, overlooked achievements, the stifled voices of colleagues who had quietly endured discrimination, and his own silent struggles in a field where excellence was often shadowed by bias. "I will not be reduced to a victim," he vowed silently, meticulously reviewing the cockpit's data and coordinating with his trusted team. During a brief pause in the flight's routine, Daniel stepped aside to collect his thoughts. Alone in the quiet hum of the aircraft, he revisited the core of his identity, not just as a pilot, but as a man who had weathered storms both literal and figurative. His inner monologue was raw and unfiltered. "Every challenge I face is a reminder that my skills, my dedication, and my integrity are my true armor. I owe it to myself and to those who look up to me to expose this injustice and demand change." The words, almost a mantra, propelled him forward, solidifying his resolve. In a subsequent conversation with First Officer Ryan Carter, who had been his unwavering ally, Daniel revealed the depth of his turmoil. "It's not about the coffee, Ryan," he admitted, his voice heavy with emotion. "It's about every unspoken slight, every moment of doubt cast upon me and my peers. This act of sabotage, this betrayal, has unmasked a deeper rot within our ranks." Ryan's expression was a mixture of sympathy and determination. "We've always known things weren't perfect," he said, "but this is a turning point. We have to ensure that no one ever feels unsafe or disrespected in our skies again." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps, a reminder that their inquiry had not gone unnoticed. The cabin crew gathered. Whispers turned into muted discussions, and even the passengers sensed that something momentous was unfolding behind the scenes. Security officials, now present to maintain order, cast long, silent looks at each crew member, as if weighing the gravity of their actions. Yet, amid the chaos, Daniel remained the unyielding force, quiet but insistent on justice. The rest of the flight unfolded within an air of somber determination. Every interaction, every decision, was underscored by a newfound clarity of purpose that Daniel's introspection and methodical approach transformed him from a mere pilot into a guardian of integrity. His quiet strength resonated through the cabin as he made one thing clear: the sanctity of the cockpit and the trust we embody must never be violated. He turned to Ryan and spoke softly but with conviction. "We stand together in the face of adversity." As the plane began its descent toward JFK, a sense of finality and resolve settled over the crew. The impending landing was not just a return to solid ground. It was a prelude to a broader reckoning within the aviation community that Daniel's determination had already ignited conversations that promised to reshape outdated practices and foster an environment of genuine respect and equality. With a calm but firm demeanor, he addressed the waiting security and HR representatives after landing, emphasizing the necessity of accountability and systemic change. "This incident demands a thorough review," he said, his voice unwavering, not only to address the immediate betrayal, but to ensure that our industry upholds the integrity and safety we all deserve. And with those words, Captain Daniel Mercer took the first step toward a battle much larger than himself. "Never permit such violations of trust again," Captain Daniel Mercer stated, his words carrying the weight of years of hard-earned experience and unwavering principles. The aftermath of the incident was met with both institutional scrutiny and an outpouring of support from colleagues and aspiring aviators alike. In private debriefings and reflective conversations, Daniel's actions were dissected and lauded, not for the confrontation alone, but for the bravery of his unwavering stand in the face of deep-seated prejudice. His journey, marked by small yet significant victories throughout the flight, resonated with those who had long suffered in silence. "We must learn from this moment," he advised a group of attentive crew members later that day, "so that our future is not defined by fear, but by a collective commitment to fairness and respect." By the time the aircraft touched down at JFK International Airport, the incident had evolved from a personal affront into a catalyst for industry-wide introspection and reform. Though physically exhausted, Daniel emerged with a clarity of purpose that transcended the immediate crisis. His internal transformation, a blend of resolve, introspection, and an unyielding desire for justice, was now a beacon for change. As he disembarked, his mind was already racing ahead, formulating plans to collaborate with HR and safety councils, ensuring that the events of that day would pave the way for a safer, more inclusive future in aviation. That I end that pivotal moment. As he exchanged firm handshakes and determined nods with his colleagues, Daniel silently vowed that his stand would not be in vain. Every conversation, every policy change that followed would echo the courage of a man who refused to let discrimination tarnish the sky he so loved. His journey, filled with quiet climaxes and profound insights, was just beginning. A journey that would continue to inspire and transform, one courageous act at a time. As the plane touched down, Daniel reflected on the turbulent journey that had reshaped his understanding of trust and equality. The earlier sabotage, the tense exchanges, and the quiet moments of introspection had all converged into a powerful lesson. Every act of injustice, no matter how small, can spark meaningful change when met with courage and integrity. Now, with a renewed sense of purpose, he recognized that progress isn't about a single moment of confrontation. It's about transforming challenges into opportunities for lasting reform. In the aftermath, conversations turned into concrete plans, and colleagues who once whispered in silence began to speak openly. Daniel had evolved from a seasoned pilot to a steadfast advocate for fairness, proving that true strength lies in rising above adversity without losing one's passion for the job. The realization that unity and accountability could reshape an entire industry filled him with quiet pride that he stepped off the plane, his eyes glimmering with hope, a symbol of resilience and determination. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and help Voices Unbound New reach 1,000 subscribers. Every voice matters in the quest for a better tomorrow.